Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to a very special episode of Wizards of the Couch. Tonight we are going to be talking about the influence of art on role-playing games. And with that in mind, we're going to be having some really beautiful art to share tonight, as well as some great stories about a wonderful artist that I think we'll all instantly recognize. But just for those who are new to the show, remember it's a grown-up show, a show for grown-ups. And we do have a little swearing and we do have a little drinking. So tonight we're going to tip back a tasty beverage and discuss art. So just starting it off, I'm Danny Grimes. I'm a professional GM. I run games at conventions around the country. Also a graphic designer and a train maker and a cartographer with Wizco Games. I'm going to go real quick to Brian. I see that guy at every convention, Berg. And he is an author, a game designer, and the owner-operator of Total Party Kill Games. Brian, what you drinking?
Well, tonight I'm drinking, in fact, out of my Game of Thrones cup, I'm drinking some vodka cranberry, of which Sara Frazetta was so kind as to call me out that it is a wee bit red.
She did it right before we went live, just like Zowie. All right, and so we also have Jimmy Duffy, Chief Reject on the Praetors Reject Twitch channel. He is running games every day through October. Every day. Wow.
Insanity.
Oh, well done. Well played, Jimmy. Well, he keeps this Twitch stream up and running and manages all of our tech. And you should be checking out his show on Praetors Rejects and Wizards of the Couch. There's stuff going on all the time. Please join us for our October Overkill because it is a good thing. And not joining us tonight live is the fearless leader, the owner of Kobold Con, the guy behind Blackwood Society, and our recent Kickstarter for Earfear, Matt KC Rift. So, but he can't be here. Do we have a funny picture, an embarrassing picture?
Yeah, it's on.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
Sir not appearing in this film?
Sir not appearing in this film. So, hey, Jimmy, what are you drinking? You still hanging with the Shiner?
No. Steeler tea.
Nice.
Does it taste like victory or defeat?
Tastes like victory?
It depends on which day, though. Yeah, who we're playing.
Tastes like victory.
Yeah, they beat us. Okay, whatever. Okay, so.
So now on to our guest for the evening. Now we made all the introductions.
We're really wanting to see this.
We are joined tonight by Sara Frazetta. She is the granddaughter of Frank Frazetta. I'm sure anybody who's been alive in the last 40 years or 50 years having to do with comic book covers and fantasy covers and role-playing games, any of that stuff knows who Frank Frazetta is. A wonderful artist, and we're going to talk about him and his art tonight, and all the things that Sara is doing. I'll just start by saying she recently formed the Frazetta Girls back in 2013. So, did I lose my video there?
Yeah, you popped for a second.
Cool. With the idea of keeping Frank Frazetta's art in the public eye, keeping it moving forward with his legacy. So, without further ado, Sara Frazetta.
There she is.
Hi. Thank you guys for having me tonight. I'm not going to be left out with the drinks though. I'm drinking Flow water, and it is not plastic.
Good. See, somebody has to stay sober. Somebody has to stay sober.
Yep.
And we totally won't make fun of you for drinking water.
No, not well.
Who am I to throw that shade about the cranberry?
I can block out his picture, Sara, if you want me to remove him. I'll be more than glad to do that right now. Okay.
And shade is an understatement. It was like blackout, lunar eclipse shade. It was wonderful.
It was great.
So, hey, just to get started, we like to get the ball rolling with maybe some questions, just background and history. And, people talk about the importance of art or some people want to refer to just the coolness of art. But when did you first become aware that this was something special? Was there some moment, or was it just something you gathered being in the family?
Well, my grandma stuck me in the museum, and stuck me because I was an infant. So I was actually around his art since infancy, and it was
wow.
it was all over the house. It's not like people imagined, like it was in like the safeguarded museum. They were pretty casual about where the art was hanging, and they weren't too concerned or paranoid. So I always knew that my grandpa was immensely talented. There were people always coming to the house, but my grandpa and I had like a really different bond. He showed me all the old films, like The Birds and King Kong and Dracula, and we really together focused on film, photography, music. So we didn't really focus on his art, but of course, it was in my subconscious, it was always so great. I never thought I'd be doing a business with it, though. That's the weird part.
Yeah, I remember that some of these books, not only the ones that had covers that your grandfather painted, but in my fairly rural Midwestern library, high school library, you had to go ask to get them. It wasn't that you couldn't have them,
Right.
And I guess our librarian was progressive enough that he didn't just tear the covers off or cover them in some way.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I remember sometimes asking for them, and I got the sense that he knew it was inappropriate according to like our local standard, but it was art. So it was okay.
Right.
because it was clearly art. It wasn't in a coarse sense pornographic or anything. It was just pretty,
Yeah.
and extremely well done. You know what I mean? Like the quality of it as well.
It's very like classical in a sense, like Renaissance. He was inspired by a lot of artists like in the late 1800s, Italian artists. I can't think of their names right now, but he referenced them quite often, and he had some formal training in his youth. So I really think that rubbed off on his style, but then he kind of mixed the little bit of like the sex addiction and love for the ladies into that style. So that's what made it so dynamic and unique. It brought sexuality into culture and made it more normal.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful imagery, that's for sure.
I think for just a moment, though, I'm sure Sarah's probably absolutely understands this, but so much of the 60s and 70s fantasy art was almost wholly influenced by your grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know. I know two of my favorite were like Frazetta and Boris. Mm-hmm. And like those two oftentimes were at war on the wall, like which one was cooler. Mm-hmm. I think it kind of floated back and forth.
Yeah, they definitely, I see definitely a similarity, obviously the genre of fantasy. The difference is Boris, I feel like he was pretty right on with anatomy. He did use the models more so. My grandfather definitely referenced, he said he did not, but you have to understand he was also 25 years of dementia. He had 8 strokes. So a lot of people will say, oh, well, Frank said this and he contradicted himself. Well, yeah, he had Graves' disease. He had strokes. His brain he couldn't use his right hand. His brain wasn't working properly. He couldn't remember our names right. So yes, he did say things that contradicted his early.
Right.
But anyway, so he referenced his photos. He referenced real life, but his anatomy was, if you really study his art, it wasn't perfect by any means. There were really unproportional people that it's like almost like alarming. Some people have actually said like it makes them physically ill, which I think is just ridiculous. But to each his own, we all perceive differently. So that's the difference I see in them. They both like had amazing color palettes, but one is just a little bit more, I guess, abstract in a way, while the other is very like from the life form, from looking at a human being.
Yeah, I think that when you create art, though, right, you're not bound by reality, So I always think of them as very idealized. Like Conan, he's idealized. He's not necessarily realistic. Right.
We love fantasy. It's fantasy for a reason. That's what I'm like. Just take it for what it is. Like it or leave it.
What did you? So I don't know. I wasn't planning to ask this question, but it's kind of interesting. So specifically with the paintings of Conan, you had this thing that everybody relates to. Everybody knows that Frank Frazetta did these, and then along comes a guy like Arnold Schwarzenegger, whose body obviously must be 100% real. You know what I mean? Back then there was no CGI, and he embodied that too. Like there was no question that he was Conan. I don't think. It's just interesting to think that that representation in art could find like a real corollary in the real world who could sell it.
I agree. I think I mean, of course, there's going to be a line drawn, but anything we can imagine could be real.
Yeah.
Conan is proof.
Yeah, for sure.
I've seen some of his girls though. Like, it's funny you said that, because I'm not going to reference them exactly, but no, Playboy, his Castle of Sin painting. It was in a Playboy spread. One of the girls in front of the castle, she's nude. She's in the middle. She looks like the model from Victoria's Secret, Adriana Lima. And very similar. And I'm going to do a blog post on it one day, but it's like he almost like, it's like he dreamt these women to exist, or maybe found someone that looked kind of like that and then rendered it, and then the universe popped it out. I don't know. It's very strange though.
Yeah. It's weird how the mind can make those connections. And then of course we make those connections because we already know it's important. So seeing it becomes more real. It's amazing all the thing. I mean, we're going to get into some more of this later, but just the way in which art fires the creative mind as an inspiration. And obviously your grandfather's work was really inspiring. So another question I had was, I'm sure people ask you like, what's your favorite artwork or that kind of stuff. I think I could probably answer at least one thing that one piece I really love. But better than that, maybe, like, what's the best short story that you've ever heard someone tell you about their favorite piece of art? Like I'm sure you get walked up to at conventions and stuff. People say, oh, your grandfather's work was so important to me. It was this or that. Any standout stories that people told you and you were kind of like, wow.
I honestly think it's compiled. I've met so many people at conventions over the years. And what touches my heart the most is when someone said they picked up a book cover and that either changed their life into doing something like writing or reading or illustrating or anything any story I hear that the art made them be something. That's what gets me. I mean, it's just amazing that, I mean, we're all connected. Like it makes me feel like that. We're all just like, let's do it for each other. So I think that hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think it totally does. I mean, it's not easy to sometimes not easy to find inspiration in the world. And I'll tell you what, I read those Robert E. Howard books I read the Conan books specifically because of that cover. I judged a book by its cover. Absolutely. And I was happy that I did. So I don't know if I'm the one who's frozen or there we go. We back? Okay. Sounds like it's good. I don't know if anybody heard what I just said. I just said that I read those Conan books because I judged a book by its cover. So it made me want to read more about whoever that was on the cover and whatever he was doing. So I think that's.
But again, think about that for a moment. So we all 100% respect, Robert E. Howard's Conan, right? Oh. But if it wouldn't have been for that cover,
the
power of that piece of art, would it have been as successful? Who knows? I would think not. Because that art is absolutely legendary. Yeah,
a lot of people have said that. They said that it was the perfect marriage, the cover and the story, and it was just aligned. It was supposed to happen. Synchronicity. That's a lot of people.
So in the history of in Frank Frazetta's like complete timeline, there has been this big rise in nerd culture just in the last 30 years. I think we can pin it on about 1990, maybe a little earlier, and to the present, where resurfacing things from the past, having appreciation for great things has come back to a lot more people, young people and people my age too, so on and so forth. Is that something that you're seeing? Has there been a big resurgence in interest in your grandfather's work, just like in the last 10 years, even when kind of nerds have firmly asserted themselves?
I mean, I honestly got into the convention circuit in 2013. Before that, I wasn't following the business or anything that was going on in Frazetta world. It wasn't until my grandpa passed away that I started it because we had a really close connection. I wanted to do something for his legacy, and it's actually online. I can judge it more so and say in the last 3 years, there's been a huge increase of fans that are younger, 10 to 20 year olds. And that gives me a lot of hope that there's just going to, I mean, it's the gaming world's not going to die. It's going to keep growing and growing. And I think the fantasy kind of coincides with it a little bit. And people just love that. They love fantasy. We love to get out of this reality. So I don't think it could, I think it will only keep growing.
Yeah. When you look into the backgrounds of those paintings, you can't imagine escaping into whatever is going on back there.
Yeah.
You know, the backgrounds to some of his paintings, I think, are some of my favorite things. And I've thought, much as you just said, that it's almost like an escape hatch. I just got to get through this person who's in front of me with that axe on that horse, and then I can go. And then I think that's crazy. I
want to go to space, the space encounter that he drew, and then dream flight. Like, I want to be that fairy sitting on the rock. Like, I think maybe I was in another life. I don't know.
Yeah,
imagination go there.
Well, I think you're here tonight with three people who share that love of being inspired by something you see. That's why art. I know that later Brian is going to want to talk a little bit about the importance of art in the aspect of marketing, I guess, is part of it, but even not that cynically. Just the idea that having art in your books, having art on the cover, these things are tremendously important for the creative inspiration that they give people. And that's why it's great to do high quality art, which means we have to pay artists. There's a lot of things that go into it we certainly want to talk about. So what do you put down the last 3 years to? Just if you had to take it off the top of your head, why the sudden resurgence? I mean, for me, I'm a lifelong fan. I don't really notice it, but
I think just culture changing. I think just everyone being online, everyone seeing it. It's just, there's so many platforms that you can reach millions and millions of people. And then, like you said, if the art's good, if it's authentic, it's going to touch you on some level if you can relate to it. And that's all art's for. I mean, you want it to be genuine, because if through any medium of art, through singing, through writing, through digital art, you can tell if it's authentic. And I think that's really the key, just being genuine. And then you'll have a human connection and touch somebody.
Yeah, I would imagine that most people, when they come across it, it's a compelling moment. I don't ever meet anybody who just sees like Death Dealer and just goes, eh. You know, there's no casual or dismissive reaction to it. You may not like it, but you'll definitely have a reaction to it.
Definitely. There's always a reaction to his art. But I mean, and of course he wasn't just this mythical man. He was a man. So he of course had paintings that were questionable, rushed, feeling, maybe not all of him, but damn, he made up for it with the ones that had the movement and you could feel, because my grandpa was so competitive. I think when he was like just pissed at the world, like so angry, he'd put something on, he'd put music on. It was probably soothing because he loved Frank Sinatra, but that's how he would show the world. That's how he would prove himself, is paint furiously, angrily. And then it came out. It was like, damn, I feel that sword going through that guy. And that was him expressing himself.
Wow.
Amazing. So translated that emotion onto canvas.
Exactly. Which is
and
so inspiring.
And specifically motion. Like, I think with other art forms, singing and so forth, you're swept up in it. You also have a voice. It's easy to imagine yourself singing it, so on and so forth. But art, for so many people, seems removed from their life. Like, it's a thing they can only look at. So therefore, to really draw people in, past that point of participation and simulation, it has to be something that really gets at you emotionally right away and forces you to look at it and to not just look at it, but like really look at it, you know. And that's kind of the thing that's always inspired me about Frank Frazetta's work. It's just amazing. Well, hey, we are, so far, this has been really great. Thank you, Sara, for being here tonight. We're just going to take a really quick, we're going to stay on the air, but we're going to do a real quick station ID. We are the Wizards of the Couch. Tonight, we're here with the lovely Sara Frazetta, the granddaughter of Frank Frazetta. If you're not familiar with his artwork, go to Google, type in Frazetta.
Oh, they're watching it right now.
Come back in like 4 hours when you're done devouring all that. No, come back right away. You'll probably see the Death Dealer first. Once you see the Death Dealer, then you'll be like, I get it now.
He'll show.
And so if you haven't seen it, please go check it out. And also, I know that Sara is the owner of the Frazetta Girls, and they have a lot of really cool stuff available on their site as well. We're going to want to send you over there after the show, and we'll get links in the doobly-doo for the YouTube rebroadcast. We also have a Patreon set up, so thanks to all of our Patreon supporters. Brian, Casey is usually the guy with the names. Do you have names, Brian, by any chance?
Not off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Okay, cool. Nope. Well, hey, you all know who you are. You are Legion. So just keep supporting us. Spread the word. We appreciate and love all of you out there in Patreon world. And
Danny, what might people see in Patreon coming soon?
Oh, yes, Brian, he said in a completely natural tone. There's a lot of cool stuff at the Patreon. We just put together this, just in the last couple of weeks or so, a really great book with 50 magnificently murderous mimics. So all you GMs out there that are looking for like surprisingly weird, terrifying creatures, we put together 50 great descriptions, a bunch of stat blocks for all sorts of cool mimicry, and we even came up with a couple of new and unique mimics that have never been seen before in the wild. And everybody who's supporting us, I'm not sure what tier level. God, I'm so misinformed.
I think everyone's going to get it.
Everybody gets that. So stop by, drop a couple ducats in the bucket, and please support us through Patreon. And I think, and obviously we're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Please go there, like us, subscribe,
Spotify.
Do the stuff, high five, hit that bell. There's a whole bunch of catchphrases.
More cowbell.
Yeah. So that's enough for Station ID. We're going to get back to talking with Sara Frazetta, granddaughter of Frank Frazetta, one of all the wizards hold Sara and her grandfather in high esteem. Him for his original, beautiful, inspiring, sexy, risque, bloody, violent artwork, which has been on the covers of so many books, and Sara for taking up the mantle of his legacy and carrying it forward so that more people can learn about her.
Experience it.
So, so back to conversation. I guess I've been asking a lot of questions. Brian, do you want to jump in and ask a question, or you want me to just take it from the top?
I did have a fun little question that I had intended to ask. Sara, with the importance of your grandfather to fantasy and gaming, role-playing games in general, have you ever played any role-playing games?
No. I will be playing Dungeons and Dragons, the ultimate role-playing game. Hopefully by 2020 or 2021. I had a dungeon master tell me that he has interest to come to Boca Grande, where we might be opening a Frazetta Art Museum.
Ooh, nice.
One of the 3 locations, so my mom might open it for the public for her art collection. But anyway, one of the dungeon masters said that he would come teach me, and we could hold a game, and maybe Joe would come, and maybe you guys can come too. So
that'd be awesome.
You teach me.
Yeah, that is awesome. And I, like so many other people who are new to the game, the thing you just have to remember is just show up, sit down, join in the fun. You don't really need to know anything. It's an experience. It's
imagination, right? Like that's
what's that?
It's all about imagination, right? Like just connecting with everyone and using your imagination, playing.
And it also, I think, is pretty easy to pick up because it's reaction. Okay. I say, this is what happens. What would you do? And you think, well, I would do this. Okay, now we're role playing, and you just go back and forth. It's like trading hands back and forth. So,
in fairness, there is dice rolling, and that can influence, how well or poorly you are doing in the game. Generally, for me, it's very poorly.
Me too.
But it's a thing. And also, Sara, one of these times we'll shoot you an invite to play online with us. So if you're comfortable doing a video like this, we would just do the same thing with our game. So
that would be fun. I would love to.
We try to get folks together just to share the experience around a table, and it's just a lot of goofing around and laughing most of the time.
But is it strategy, or is it just kind of human strategy?
It can be
reactions. It can be. Okay.
It's a mix of everything. The mix of a strategy, but then you are role playing it out, and telling a story, and you immerse yourself into the story and go through it. So,
It's basically story time where you get to interrupt every once in a while and go, "Oh, wait, you said we're going downhill. Can we go up the hill instead?" And then,
and what if you kill your team? Like, can that happen?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow, yeah, I want to play this.
Yes, it
Yeah, that happens all too
Not
often.
that I want to kill my team. I'm just asking, like, is that a scenario you could possibly get everyone like?
Not only is it,
okay.
Sarah, it's why probably about 30% of people who play this game play this game.
Oh wow!
To be fair, I think, Sarah, you get to pick like your favorite painting and character from that painting, and we'll make you a character to play.
Oh, I want to be the fairy. I already said this. So
Yep.
Okay, there it is.
You can play a fairy, and you can bring your own mushroom tuffet with you, so you can sit on it whenever you need to and meditate. So,
I love it. You know me. Okay.
So you mentioned Joe a second ago. I did want to talk to you about that because we were talking earlier about like, what do you think the recent popularity or resurgence of popularity? I got to believe at least a little of it is Joe Manganiello's Death Saves line. It's caused a lot of stir in the role-playing industry. There's always been t-shirt people, but he's really treating it as like urban street art and creating a really cool vibe. Obviously he's from LA, so everything's 10% cooler. But how did that, because you're in charge of the licensing, right? You're that company who puts that together. So how did that work out?
Frazetta Girls. Because the family split up. I started my own brand, Frazetta Girls, and I'm kind of back in 2016. We started reframing our company because that's kind of what I wanted to do. Like, you see one of our shirts here, Fire and Ice. Shameless.
Yes.
Yeah. But we wanted to make Frazetta more of a streetwear brand. And it's been a very slow process because it's very expensive to make samples and, get minimum orders and all that fun stuff. So it's slowly happening, but I think Joe's done an amazing job especially with his design team, Damien. Joe and I actually met on Twitter. He just tweeted at me and I was like, oh, I'll DM him. I want to send him some stuff. And then he was like, I'm making a streetwear company. This was like, was this 2018, I think? Like summer.
Uh-huh.
And then he released soon after and he's just been like plowing forward. I mean, he's getting so many great IPs and he's commissioning these like amazing artists that are just creating these like demagogues that are like mind blowing. And I think he's definitely inspired us like to kick it up the 10% cooler LA notch, so I'm like, all right, get going. So I think Joe's really cool and what he's done to especially Dungeons and Dragons. It's awesome.
Well, but as awesome as it is, there are two sides of the coin there. It's not probably entirely altruistic, right? There is a market of like 40 million people that are playing role-playing games in this world. And that cannot be ignored, right? That's why companies like Wendy's are putting out their own role-playing games.
More on that later.
Yeah. So, tapping into that market absolutely is brilliant because your grandfather inspired so many of us in so many different ways. So we will absolutely pimp your product. And when I get out of here, I'm probably going to order a t-shirt from Frazetta Girls. So,
for sure.
I'm going to send you guys some stuff. So don't do that. Don't.
Oh.
But thank you. You just send me your
We
stuff.
just want to listen. It's still, we're really, really tiny. We're just starting out, but you also just said, you're working hard on your business too. It's always a struggle because wherever you are, you want to go someplace else.
Yeah, no, it's any business. Like you have to just be okay with those really bad days, the really bad news where you really screwed up and you have no one to blame but yourself because you're the only person working there.
We blame Jimmy for everything.
Yeah.
Actually, tonight we blame Matt. Matt, it's all your fault.
It's all your fault.
I was gonna say about Joe too, that like he's like that line specifically was great because in this hobby there are traditionalists, like anything, there's a spectrum of participation, and we have traditionalists who really think that the way it was done in 1975 through 1980 or so in this hobby, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
And those people love Frazetta. So like even though it's this cool streetwear line, he's creating something that everyone in the hobby can still appreciate by bringing in, like you said, IPs like this that appeal to everybody.
Yeah. His Dark Crystal one was great too. I don't know if you just saw that. That was it was
oh my God, right?
He definitely has his finger on the zeitgeist, and I was blown away when he put out the rings and all that stuff too. It's just really cool.
And
to see.
Again, it's all what he really loves. I mean, everything that he's really interested in him and inspired him as he grew up, and that's everything he's putting into his brand. And I think that's the part that's really inspiring to me. Is like what I said about art, it's even with a brand or a podcast or anything, you have to be authentic. Like if you don't, people sniff it out and they're like, they just want money or whatever clicks, or so it has to be you. And that's why Joe is, God, he's a year and a half in, he's killing it. Like he really is.
So is there more in the works?
Making me look bad, Joe.
So the stuff that I've seen at Frazetta Girls is really great too, though. I mean,
thank you.
That's, I guess, and you have access to everything. So are you starting to work with designers to create? I always think of concert tees, right? You got the piece of art, but then you've got some graphics going on with it. Are you thinking of getting into that space as well with some of this stuff?
Yeah, we just hired our first designer. That was a big step, yay! But he's amazing. He's a great artist. So I'm excited to see what we can do with change. It's hard because you don't want to change Frazetta's art. People get kind of offended.
Yeah.
But then there's also a new age of people who kind of like to see things a little different. Like you can take a rendition and just take
remix culture.
Yeah, a remix, exactly. So there's people who appreciate that and there's people who hate that. So you have to kind of find the middle ground. And I think that's what I'm coming to as like a brand owner. I'm like, okay, we'll give a little bit for everybody. And make everybody happy. You're going to always have some people that are offended, but you have to take risks. Some are horrible and do terribly. And then other ones you're like, wow, that did better than I expected. But we've been designing everything so far. And that's been a big challenge because I never designed anything until I owned this company. I was into acting. So that was my creative outlet for a long time. I never actually moved anywhere that I could pursue that career, but my health got pretty bad for a while. And then I really focused on Frazetta Girls and then, did all the in-house designing. We do all the manufacturing. And then, like I said, dealing with licensing and collaboration. So it's a lot.
Sounds like. Well, question for me. So we were chatting here, and as you migrated, you're talking about Joe and connecting with the technological side of it all, and seeing now what's happening here. Now you say you've got a designer, and you're more, I'm sure more people you're dealing with now are electronic based. So what was your grandfather's feeling, or as he was, progressing through his career, the technical side of it, and did he have opinions of it in the later years about what was happening with art and the tools that are there that people are using now? I mean, because he had to retrain himself, as you said, during his, to redraw and to learn, using his own, I think it was left hand, wasn't it? Yeah. And what was, so what was some of the thoughts process there? What did he think about that stuff?
I think my grandpa would have loved digital art. Obviously digital art's been around since the 60s, but it didn't start getting really popular until, correct me if I'm wrong, 90s. Probably. So when he had his strokes, he was sick for 25 years before he passed away. So he lost his ability to use his right hand in the mid 90s. He kind of went through depression. He was into sports. He wasn't able to do anything. So his ability to want to learn something like that would have been, it just didn't exist. It was enough to walk and get through the day. But I do know, in 2010, I was with him every day before he passed away. I'd come back from college and spend time with him when he was in Boca Grande. He was really into social media and Facebook. In 2010, I made him his own account. And he was on there and he was looking at everyone's art, digital art, and he was like, wow, this is fantastic. This is great. This is, I can talk to people on here and they can tell me what they think about my art. That's incredible. And then he was amazed with new technology with cameras, like amazed by the TVs, everything. So I think if he had the ability to learn and take that in, he definitely would have gone to it. It was intriguing to him. I think he would have played with it.
Good to know.
Yeah, I was just curious, I always feel like some artists, they just only have one mode that they can, they're going to be an oil painter. That's it.
Right.
They are not really interested in anything else.
That was not my grandfather. I mean, he dabbled in watercolor, inks. I mean, he did the oils. I mean, he would have done anything. I mean, he painted on almost everything, masonite boards and
yeah. So many ideas that they just keep falling out of you.
Right.
Whatever tool you have at hand is what
he was a little lazy though. He was. I mean, he painted a lot. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, Grandpa, but he was a little bit. When he got comfortable, he got comfortable. He wanted to watch his movies and he liked to actually. My grandpa loved video games, so I think he would have been into role-playing games if he had the chance to. He loved Nintendo. We played it a lot.
That's great.
Yeah. Mario Kart, we were good at it. And what's the game with the old Nintendo 64 with the ice picks? Do you guys know that game?
Which one?
Mm-hmm.
It was like little ice picks, like they were going up the little frozen tundras and the ice picks. I think it's from 95.
Wow. You stumped a panel of nerds.
Yeah.
Ultimate nerd right here. It was all down inside of me. It's really been coming up the last couple of years. I'm like, I didn't know I was like this, but I should have, because I was like obsessed with Pokemon. So it shouldn't be that. I was like, I didn't know my identity in high school, tried to be someone else. And then it all is coming back.
Preach, sister. Preach.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
Sarah,
we all have different opinions about what's digital gaming, right? Like Pokemon qualifies, it doesn't have to be Doom. It can be anything.
That's true. And I loved Zelda. Does that count?
Oh, big time. I'm playing Zelda right now. I'm playing Breath of the Wild right now.
Wow.
Brian.
So Sarah, what actually made your grandfather decide to pick up the brush? Like what was that impetus that made him go, I'm going to become one of, if not the greatest fantasy artists of all time?
Origin story.
It started at 3. Like I'm telling you, this man was the most competitive man. When I knew him, he was like a little sick, so he couldn't let it all out. But the more I read about him, I'm like, damn, the competition was strong. He got a single penny from his grandmother. She said, you can do this, Frank. His parents didn't have any money. They were Sicilian, or second generation Sicilian, sorry. But no money. Obviously, it was in the 1930s in New York. So he really wanted to prove himself to his family. Like he really wanted to prove himself to his dad. And he said, I'm going to be somebody, Dad. And like starting at, like I said, like 3 years old. And then finally his teachers at 8 years old, they were like they went up to his parents and were like, you have to enroll this kid into art school. He's really good. And he was like drawing all the boards and like he would just doodle the whole time in class, not even listen to anything the teacher was saying, like typical artist.
Right.
So finally, when he was in art school, that's when he picked up a paintbrush and he really started getting into painting. Michel Falanga, who was his art teacher, and he really let him express himself however he wanted to, and really let him be free. And wow, like his oils when he was 8 years old, they make me very like, I don't ever want to put my art. It's embarrassing.
Yeah,
you know what? He also didn't have anything holding him back, right? There's so many of us today that are afraid to do art, afraid to express ourselves.
Yep.
And, sometimes when you just go all in, you free yourself and are capable of great things.
Yeah. And, he said in a couple interviews later on in life, and I knew my grandfather, he was really sensitive. And even though he made such an impact on the world, he too was really pushed by criticism. Like he didn't let it go. I mean, he said that he wished he would have been an athlete just so no one could have criticized his athletic abilities like they did with his art. because he said, I'm putting out something that's so vulnerable and it's me. And then people have the audacity to say it's bad, or I should do it this way, or I meant that. He's like, people are putting words in my mouth. And that really pissed him off. Like he was a sensitive guy. So I think he definitely, he didn't get past it. I don't know if anyone can ever get past that point of being afraid to put out art.
Yep.
Also, via the power of the internet, we have learned that the name of this game is Ice Climbers.
That's it. Ice picks. Yeah, there it is. That's the game.
I mean, aptly named, right?
As soon as I saw it, I was like, I remember what it was. Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, I think, I was talking the other day. I was out to lunch with my wife, and there was some guys across the street painting a mural on the side of a liquor store. I assume they were painting a mural. It was broad daylight. Nobody seemed to be hassling them. So I went over and I said to him, so how do you feel when you're done? And they said, the one guy, they kind of looked at each other and smiled. And the one guy said, we step back, we take one long look at it, and then we go paint another mural somewhere else. I said, do you ever come back? They're like, only by accident. We'll just be driving down and they'll see it. And that's how I feel about when I do art. Once it's done, the thing that I'm doing it for is over. Like now, whether it's good or whatever, it doesn't really matter anymore because I've gotten it out. For me, it's all about getting it out. And
so true.
I got to imagine that somebody as competitive as it sounds like your grandfather was, there's probably an issue too of like putting out more and more because each time you improve it or each time you try some new technique.
That's so true. Yeah, every artist needs to hear that for sure. Just get it out and move on.
Yeah.
I mean, for us, it's a little bit harder now because we're putting it out on social media, so we have a lot more eyes and trolls and comments and
people are so nice on the internet.
Yeah. It's like a big kumbaya festival.
When I started putting my art on Facebook, I did it deliberately. First, because I'm the granddaughter of Frank Frazetta, and I copy his work, which is crazy because it's like, that's like, poof. But why would I do that? I do that because I want to get thicker skin. I want to be open to total criticism and judgment. And I have been, and it's made me a better human being. I'm like, okay, I suck and it's okay. It's like, you'll get better. You'll get there, put in the work. And it's been really humbling. I think everyone should humiliate themselves once in a while.
It's so true.
I think humility is one of the things that would definitely improve society as a whole if more people had a reasonable amount of it.
Would you like us to post that link, Sarah, so we could show everybody where your artwork's at?
You ready for some humbling?
Yeah, you ready for some humility?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool. Well, do we have any other great questions in the audience maybe for Sarah?
Yeah, let's take a quick look at chat, and I just want to say thanks a ton to Sarah before we get to this next question. Thank you for taking time tonight. I know you have an early morning tomorrow, so we can't keep you up to howl at the moon, but I have a sneaking suspicion that this will not be the last time that we interact.
No.
I would love to be back. We can howl at the moon next time, and I'll have a proper drink.
Yeah, there you go. We should.
I'm going to hold you to it now.
I will. Yeah.
I'll have more vodka in mine apparently.
There you go.
Yeah, that can't be red anymore. It's supposed to, yeah.
Oh, is there a question from the gallery?
Someone was wondering if you'd ever tied into the larger fantasy art community through IlluxCon.
No, I haven't. On
IlluxCon.
I don't know.
I never even heard of that.
It's a community. Is it online or is it actually at the con?
I believe it's a website, which may be a convention too. I'm not
the
sure.
The world's leading organization dedicated to contemporary imaginative realism.
Wow. No, but I will look into it. That's interesting.
I'll send you that. I'll send it to you in a tweet, Sarah.
Thank you.
Because I've just described everything. I went ahead and did that. So,
yeah.
Okay.
We assume that it's just it's a good question, not just a huckster for Illix.com trying to talk you into an appearance.
Good plug.
Yeah.
It's a big artist convention.
Oh, right on. Right on. Yeah. Have you ever, I guess just to follow on that question right before we go, have you ever been to Gen Con?
Not. I would love to go to Gen Con.
They have an artist's row there.
Mm-hmm.
And which is really outstanding. First of all, it's fun to go, even if you're just in town for a day, to check that out. But also, I can't imagine that wouldn't be a great place to
absolutely
set up shop, because you've got 80,000 people under one roof that probably 70% of them know who your grandfather is.
Yeah.
You know,
we have. I can't say anything because I think you jinx it if you tell people what you're working on.
Yep. Okay.
And so, but for the gaming community, we have really fun news coming in 2020.
Ooh.
So it will be, I like that.
Keep us posted.
You planted the seed. Yes, I will be back when I
bring
can
her back.
fun news.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Let us know, because we want to do anything we can do to support the Frazetta girls. I mean, we're just a humble little startup ourselves. But anything,
you guys are going big places. You guys are great.
The love. Yeah.
We have the best guests in the industry.
Yeah, we do. We do. And then
thank you.
Yeah, it keeps going. It keeps going strong. Well, thank you so much. I'm saying thanks right now, everybody out there, to Sara Frazetta of the Frazetta girls. She's the granddaughter of Frank Frazetta, beloved fantasy artist. If you aren't aware of his work, just type Frazetta into Google, and I guarantee you that the images coming back will inspire creativity in you, and also give a glimpse into a career that spans decades, with many just formative images. It's cliche to say like my favorite is The Death Dealer, but that was on the cover of a Molly Hatchet album.
First one.
Yeah, and I was a Molly Hatchet fan, so that was a big moment for me when I saw that cover. I knew who Frank Frazetta was before the cover, which made me go, "Damn, these guys got Frazetta for the cover." So
the second one too.
I want everybody to check this out, because a lot of people out there who might be watching that are a little younger than me, anyway, may not be aware of his. Yeah. Thanks. Trying to say something heartfelt about Frank Frazetta, guys.
Don't you know where you are?
Bringing a tear to my eye here, and then you just got to jump in. So once again, thanks to Sara Frazetta for being here tonight.
Thanks, guys. You have a good night.
Thank you
as well.
Take care.
See you for gaming.
Bye, guys. Thank you again.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Wow, that was
super
amazing.
Cool.
That was super cool. I am seriously getting like fanboy red cheeks. So yeah, super cool. Sara is super cool, and the stuff that she has done with Death Saves, one of my favorite brands that I'm sporting all the time.
For sure.
And then just the stuff she's doing with Frazetta Girls over at that site. Lots of great art, awesome t-shirts, posters, all sorts of cool stuff. So everybody should definitely go check out Frazetta Girls and support Sara and her important work keeping the legacy of her grandfather, Frank Frazetta, alive and in the public eye.
That's cool. It's cool.
And now we move on.
Man, every guest seems better than the last. Like and
they're all great. It's weird. Right? It's weird how people keep topping. Oh, I wanted to say too, we reached back out to Larry Elmore, and he offered his regrets at not being able to be here when he was scheduled 2 weeks ago. He just had some stuff come up. So and you don't like get weird about it with Larry Elmore, because Larry Elmore is Larry freaking Elmore. So he's going to be back sometime in the new year. We weren't able to get any tighter than that because we have guests planned out now between now and the end of the year. But we will have him back on. We will have a great conversation, and it'll be nice to be spread out from this conversation because we'll have a different discussion about art. Mm-hmm. Brian, you have brought something up with me in the intervening 2 weeks about the importance of art. You're a publisher. And right. I've published many, many things through TPK.
Tell me about it.
Yeah. And so I think we all are a little intimidated about creating stuff because sometimes we all realize innately got to have art in it. And now people are sophisticated enough to realize you need this many quarter pages per 6 pages, and this much black and white, this much color, so on and so forth. So that I think dovetails real nicely with the conversation we were having about the importance of art. But then there's the business side of the importance of art. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? I'm going to make myself a fresh drink.
Yeah, no problem. Anybody out there in the audience, or Jimmy, I'll ask you. What's the last novel that you read?
Would you believe it is? I just picked up and redid the first Dragonlances. Just picked them back up again. Started reading them. I hadn't read them forever.
Okay.
So yeah.
Damn you! You chose one that defeated my question. But since it's D&D related, right? But I guess what I was getting at is when you start talking about novels versus role-playing products. Any novel you pick up is going to have a cover, right? And unless it's a good fantasy novel, it likely doesn't have a top-tier artist, like Larry Elmore, doing such great artwork, right? So even some of my absolute favorite novelists from like the 80s, the art is just bad if you even get good art at all. Sometimes like on these revisions of books, you'll get like some sort of symbol and text. Okay, wow, you guys really nailed it. And then how much art do you have on the interior of a novel? Virtually none.
Yeah, I was going to say, you go back and look through it all.
Okay.
Not even a handful, I bet.
You'll have a map.
Sometimes you're lucky to get a map, often black and white, right?
Yeah, right.
And the point that I'm getting to is that as people steeped in fantasy, fans of Dungeons and Dragons, and really every role-playing game worth its salt, art plays a huge part of a game, right? It inspires you, but it also, to some degree, is the marketing force that makes you pick it up, right? If your art doesn't sell your book, well, you're probably not going to make any more, right? And we as a fan base in the role-playing games, it's bonkers because we have such high expectations of what art has to look like, right? And okay, Wizards of the Coast, who's selling millions of units, has a very different economy of scale than a small compatible publisher or an indie publisher, like myself, for instance, right? I have a few platinum bestsellers, but not every single one of my titles does. So I can't afford to put, an Elmore or a Jeff Easley on every single product.
Right.
Right. So I was just going to talk a little bit about that. Art and words together fuel imagination. All right. If you pick up Vampire the Masquerade, any book from Vampire, maybe not 5th edition, we'll talk about that someday. You pick up any World of Darkness book, the art absolutely sells the genre. It sells the game.
True.
You immediately feel more brooding. You feel more gothic, right? Because the art is perfect for the genre and the game. The two have to be kind of simpatico to really to work. I would think that any game that doesn't have art that matches the flavor and the feel of the game, it's just not going to work. And like, if I'm looking through a book and I see art that just blows my mind, sometimes those characters will leap off the page into my, creativity. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to play that particular character class because it's illustrated so well, right? It literally fuels my imagination.
It's aspirational. You see it, and you aspire to it.
And for those of you who don't know, cover art for these role-playing games that everyone demands in such high quality, decent cover art could go maybe $500 to $5,000. All right. So the next time that you are on the internet and you are pirating someone's PDFs, or complaining that, you know, $1.99 is too expensive for the PDF version, just think about that. Think about what goes into that PDF, what level of quality and standard we as a consumer base have pushed upon this industry. And it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to say something you said about books not needing interior art. I think
Sure.
that there is still a prejudice against writers, and I'm not saying this from a sour grape standpoint. I don't think people who write for this are fine with writing for it, but I think like authors wouldn't want those pictures in there. It's their job as an author to paint that picture with words.
That's exactly.
They don't want that photo, right? And I think
They don't want to.
Go on.
They don't want to have to compete with it either.
Right. So in some ways, probably they feel this way about covers too. Don't paint my hero as Fabio, you know, because that's not really how I see my hero, but Fabio will definitely sell books.
Right.
And for those of you who are not super old, you have no idea who Fabio is, but just substitute some really.
He's that butter guy,
Looks like
right?
Danny.
Yeah, I
butter
substitute some
like
hot-looking guy from now, and that's that guy.
Mhm.
And I think that we're not really authors, though. We are adventure writers. Like, we write a thing. It's a genre unto itself. It's an interactive piece of fiction. And back in the day when Errol Otis, another fabulous artist, God, I wish we could get him to talk someday, he was drawing things that nobody had ever even thought of. Like, when I saw the cover of that module, I was like, I'd never have seen like a weird mushroom man with like crab pincers. So it became set in everybody's gaming mind. Hey, you got to have whacked out art. You got to have maps. You got to have blah, blah, blah.
No, that's exactly right. And you know what though? Like, let's compare role-playing games, which are pen and paper games, to all these mobile apps. Okay. Mobile apps are the hugest thing right now. They're making millions upon millions and millions of dollars off of trash art. And not all of them are garbage, okay? But there are so many out there that absolutely are. They're slapped together hastily. They don't have Boris Vallejo. They don't have Frank Frazetta. They don't have Errol Otis doing the art, right?
Yeah. Well, just by sheer numbers, right? A lot of it's got to be crap. Right.
And so it's so crazy to think of the level of quality in art in role-playing games. And I guess the question is it the art that attracted role-playing game, you know, designers and producers to latch onto? Or is it because the games kind of really needed that sort of art to be as evocative as it is?
Well, doesn't that, Brian, go back to the origins of this game as like a war game simulation? To the art was to explain very specifically what was going on for people who weren't necessarily, I mean, GMing back in the old days, it wasn't as leaning in on the imagination of the GM as it is now. Now it's much more about storytelling and creating interesting play. But there used to be a time when people just kind of like dungeon crawled. And those people didn't necessarily want to think up all these fantastic things. They wanted something to share with players.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it really comes around to cost, you know. Most small publishers simply just get the best art that they can and often accept lower profits in order to be able to create something noteworthy. So every person who decides one day to wake up and be a third-party publisher or an independent publisher or, you know, whatever, then why would you do that?
I remember that day, Brian. I remember that day, and it's among the worst of my life.
You know, it's because you're creative. It's because you have a passion for role-playing games, right? They've probably given you something in your life, and you're trying to give back, right? So it's just crazy that we're, as a business, willing to give and put the absolute best art we can in our products, and are willing to accept much lower profits because of it, because we want to give back to the community. And if you want some crazy numbers, go on Drive-Thru RPG sometime. A copper bestseller is only 50 copies. Okay. A silver bestseller is only 100 copies. Electrum, 250 copies, and gold is 500 copies. Okay. So that means that most small publishers, which is the vast majority of people on that platform, their budget is based on 50 to 100 copies selling, right? Mm-hmm. So when people go to Kickstarter, support them, because this is how they can afford to put amazing artwork for you, the consumer, into their product. It's not so they can get rich. Heavens.
And we all laughed.
Rob Schwab had the best saying. I want to say, he said the best way to become a millionaire in the RPG publishing world is to start with 2 million.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I told a game store owner one time, when a local gaming store is about to close? And he said, what? 6 months before, when it opens.
Yeah.
These are the jokes. I think that what you're talking about too is the democratizing ability of being online. It's great that we can sell our stuff online, but it's also really good for artists. So I'll just put a note of optimism in this. Yes, there was a time in my life, now no longer going to happen because Mr. Parkinson has passed away, but when I dreamed of doing something and Keith Parkinson would make the cover. I see. Yes, of course, Brian. Thank you very much. I see your awesome wall of art. And now I realize that while that would be wonderful, I can also deal with Antonín from Czech Republic, who is freaking amazing. And he's got beautiful art. Who knew the world had so many artists? When I was growing up, it was considered like a rare skill.
Right.
Now it is obvious it is an extremely, maybe it's only uncommon, but maybe it's not common, but it's amazing.
I think it is a rare skill. I think we're just more connected.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So we're seeing everybody. It's the same percentage, but we're just seeing everybody, and now we're seeing that bigger number. Yeah. Fair enough. But it also allows people who, and I guess some people would say this is exploitative, but if I contract with some artist who's in a, pardon me, who's in a country where the standard of living is very low, and I'm able to pay him what I consider to be a fair amount for his art, but I'm still making some money.
Right.
He's making way more money than he would have made. I'm able to release my product. Is that a strategy that is often employed, or is it really?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. Because it comes down to quality, right? If I can get two artists, one from the US, one from the Ukraine, and both have the exact same level of quality, but an American artist wants to charge $2,000 and a Ukrainian artist delivering the same product is going to charge me $400. I mean, from a business perspective, I absolutely have to go with the cheapest, but yet for the best quality.
Yeah. I think too, it's not, I appreciate what Brian's saying there too, but it's not even so much that the artist must charge us more. It's just that they that they want to. It's just the standard of living here is so much higher that they have to. Mm-hmm. You can't spend 3 or 4 days doing a painting, digital or not, and then not get paid a living wage to do it.
And we joke, you see all those memes and such on the Facebooks about getting paid for your work, right? Don't just work for exposure, right? And of course, that is a thing in the United States. Why would you possibly want to do a vast amount of work and not get paid for it, right? But by the same token, publishers put in an immense amount of time and effort from multiple different people to create these things, and so they need to get paid too.
So I want to just segue here real quick to something we just did, sure. Brian. Back in architecture school, we had these things called charrettes, and charrette is a French word that means being given a design problem and an extremely limited amount of time and material to deal with it. And so they would give us, design a park. You have till tomorrow. It's for veterans. And then you had to design something. So Brian, when was it, about 10 days ago? It's been such a blur. Brian said, hey, why don't we put something out for the Patreon, for the patrons on our Patreon that is just a nice little gift to them. And this is what it is. Had a theme, 50 mimics, blah, blah, blah. And I'm a designer. I'm a layout designer. So I knew the part I was going to do. And Brian started writing up the descriptions, and Matt did his thing. And Jimmy was running one day game every 6 days. No, 6 days a week, taking one day off. That's what his contribution was, because he is an unstoppable force of nature. But in the end, we produced in about a week with 3 pieces of art.
Mm-hmm. Original pieces of art, by the way.
Original piece of art. And I remember very well the email that you shot out. Hey, man, we're doing some mimics to our artist friend, Phil
Stone.
Hey, we need a couple things, like a vampiric kind of mimic looking casket and something else. And within a day, boom, here it is, back to us. It can be done. You know what I mean? And I think that's going to be a really nice little booklet for people to have. It's going to be very useful. I see it being on a lot of DM's little rack of things to drag out when they need something special. So it can be done, and he was happy for the commission, and we were happy to pull it together very quickly. So It was really interesting to see you produce that, Brian. It was a cool glimpse into here's how you do it. Let's get
insanity that lives up here.
Yeah, that was good. You pushed hard. It was neat that it all came together so quick.
And you know what?
Become our patron on Patreon. We're there.
So this particular product is obviously going out to our patrons first, but will eventually become a free product available for everyone to download. And no matter where you go to buy your PDFs, download this one. It's going to be free, and it's going to wow you. It's a really nice looking product, very clever. Mimics obviously are our namesake. Our mascot is also included within the stat blocks. It's just a really, really fun product. And if you like what you see, and I really think that you will, come back us on Patreon. It helps this show continue to produce amazing guests like Sara Frazetta. And then we'll be continuing to produce even cooler additional small PDF products.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt at this point just to take a quick station break and remind everybody out there that we are the Wizards of the Couch. And I'd like to thank my co-hosts, Brian Berg and Jimmy Duffy, and the as yet unknown where he is in the friendly skies above the United States, KC Rift. We are missing him tonight because I know he would have a lot to say about this as well. He is a dyed-in-the-wool writer and public. Yeah, I guess that's probably true. But we miss him today. So I just wanted to say thanks to all my fellow wizards, and thanks again to Sara Frazetta. Gosh, what a great
cool.
Guest to have. Such a lovely spirit, and obviously very much loved her grandfather and is willing to carry that legacy forward. So you can find us here every other Monday. So this is one of those every other Monday.
First and third.
Yeah, first and third. He always corrects me. I'm so vague, and then Jimmy's like busts out my stats. Find us here first and third Monday of every month, except those months where there's 6 Mondays and weird stuff. And you can also find us on the Wizards of the Couch channel running lots of games. That's what Jimmy's doing all month. Running games, 6 nights a week between Praetor's Rejects channel.
Madness.
It is madness.
Till the video sync. You can find us all over social media on Twitch, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all them places. You can also find YouTube posts the following week. You'll see this show in another few days when we repost it up. And then we have podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Anywhere else, Brian?
I believe there's a Google Play something. The Googles know.
Everywhere. Just type in Wizards of the Couch. I'm not even sure that's the best thing to type in. But yeah, I guess it probably is.
Or Wizards Couch.
Wizards Couch. And you can watch the replays for those of you who are just gluttons for punishment. And then our Patreon is patreon.com/WizCoGames. That's us. And we're putting out lots of cool stuff there. So anyway, that is our station ID. I never dreamed
as Danny was saying, maybe go back, watch us on YouTube. Maybe, you don't have a whole lot of friends and you wish that we were there with you in person. Just turn on Wizards of the Couch before you go to bed, and it's like hanging out with us.
Yeah. No.
Totally not weird at all.
And if it helps, think of us like 3 to 4 drinking buddies who follow you back to your room after you're drunk and then just sit there keeping you awake.
That's right.
Oh, I
You're
would
probably
let you
thinking,
pass out.
when
and then
will they
mark
shut up?
They're like,
Yeah, and then mark you up. No,
We're not going to shut up. We're just going to keep talking.
Jesus, Brian, do you ever stop?
Yeah. They just, that's all they do. That's what they do. Okay. So out of the station ID and back to the questions. Do you have anything else more you want to say about like what it takes to get art in? I mean, like, do you have any suggestions for, just to close that out, do you have any suggestions for people who they've got a great idea, they want to get out there, they know they need to get some art involved? How do you make sure you don't get ripped off or you're not ripping someone off? I mean, a lot of people are socially conscious. They don't want to rip anybody else off either. How do you walk that line, Brian? Then we can move on to a new question if you want.
As an artist, I don't really know. I mean, I think that you need to kind of look at some of your peers and try and figure out, and you can certainly ask, your peers, say, hey, what do you charge for this? What are your rates? Many artists have that already published, right? So you can easily go to their website and just see what their rates are. However, they have a name, they have a known ethic, and also a quick shout out to Rick Hershey, because Rick, he's the guy who designed our cool, awesome logo. And that guy has one of the most insane work ethics I've ever seen. And I've actually never met Rick in person, which is absolutely shocking. But someone like that, whom 100% delivers, they can afford to charge a little bit more because you're guaranteed to get your work done and in a timely manner, right? I've worked with a number of artists in the past whom I took a chance on and got totally burned because they either didn't deliver at all, completely ghosting me, even though I pay real money, or are maybe don't quite deliver. So you need to get your name out there. And if your first few pieces for a company, you don't make a vast sum of riches like you thought you would right after college, it's okay, right? You build up your portfolio, show what you can do, show who you have worked for, and then people will absolutely take notice of your abilities.
And I would add, Brian, that art has never been easier to sell than it is now. But you are operating in a much more crowded marketplace as well. Mm-hmm. So, it's really I'm not a cover painting type artist, but I'm a different kind of artist. And I have always reminded myself that it can end at any moment. So I think there's always a reticence to charge too little because you don't know when the next commission is coming, but you don't want to charge too much and scare people away. The funny thing about that statement, though, is that you feel you should charge more. You're just worried that the market might shy away from it. So I think as an artist, it's a real interesting tightrope to walk. And as much as they don't work for experience, you have to work for experience sometime. My advice would be don't work for experience any longer than you have to. Because at the beginning, unless you really are that hyper talented person, and even then you're just going to be in a pool of other hyper talented people,
that's the problem. Yeah.
There's always somebody who's technically better. Would you say, Brian, before we close out of that altogether, it's hard always to, I know we'll get mail, but when you talk about like the qualities of art, so I'm going to assume that there's some way of objectively stating that. You have two artists, one who's technically better, you can just tell, but one who will deliver. Right. Which one do you pick?
I will probably go with the one that will deliver.
Assuming that they're both pretty good. There's just one who,
Sure.
Yeah. That's the reality of publishing, right?
Yeah, because, here's the thing is when you're putting together a product, you want it to be cohesive. So you don't want a bunch of disparate pieces of art that are coming from different artists with different feel, different look. You want it to kind of all be similar so that, here's a great example. Open up any Paizo product. They have a fantastic amount of art and must have an amazing art manager because the art is all cohesive. Many times you can't tell the difference between two artists.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is phenomenal. The fact that you
remember the Lockwood era of Wizards of the Coast when Sam Lockwood was there? There were like several people who it all just worked together. But there was like 8 different artists, but they had all
Yeah.
obviously come together and agreed, hey, we're going to stick to these palettes and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's difficult, and I praise the artists who can. And frequently, I have to say, okay, singular artist, I need like 6 pieces to make sure that they all look together, right? And now suddenly that artist is like, really, Berg, 6 pieces in what, 2-3 weeks? Thanks, buddy.
Yeah.
You know, so at that point, I do have to go with someone who I know can deliver.
Right. You know who would have been a great person to ask that question is Jim Pinto, because he was art director for that big L5 art, Legend of the Five Rings CCG. And you want to talk about a job when you're the CCG art director, when you got like literally hundreds of pieces of art.
It's a good thing he's so friendly and
Just a peach.
Yeah.
The kind of guy you just
Yeah.
want to sip a mint julep with and talk about sunsets.
He loved his work.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So I guess I feel like when we're trying to create, because Wisco Games wants to create products. I mean, we're already doing it, but we're going to create more. I think that eventually we will be working with like a group of artists, and that's when that's like having somebody who's really truly an art director, not just a creative, like sees the overall vision, but someone who can really communicate with artists in their language to achieve that cohesive look. That's the importance of having an art director, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that is 100% right. You're establishing the look and feel of your properties and your product. And you know what? It's a much harder job than you'd think. I consider myself a creative person, but when it comes down to me, like giving a description of what I'm looking for in a piece of art, artists will always come back and ask for way more detail, right? Things that I didn't think about, because I'm not an artist and you would never want me to be an artist. But I think that's important.
Yeah. Well, that's why, for those of people who are out there who kind of wonder why this is delved into this industry topic, I think it's because you are the industry. If you're watching this, you might be sitting on the next cool idea that you want to publish, and there's real rules of the road that go with this. I mean, you can find it other places online too. But Brian here, he has published stuff, and he's published stuff not from a position of having those unlimited budgets. He didn't just get a job at WotC and start this. It was an issue of, I really don't know your whole origin story, but I know that you just got busy and got on the convention circuit.
We'll do that someday.
Yeah, we should. We should talk about a little bit about our origin stories, because I think we all have very different ways of getting into this hobby. So,
all right, one last
please,
crazy thing. The one beautiful thing though about being an independent publisher is you don't have to entirely chase the market. You can 100% publish passion projects if you want. If you were a ginormous company, you have to go, okay, here are the trends in the industry. Here's where we need to take our product. Okay. Sometimes that probably leaves a bad taste in the mouth of the consumers, because maybe they're veering off in a direction that you, the consumer, didn't want or don't love, right? Those are huge risks when you're talking about the amount of money that's involved. You do a print run of several 100,000 books. That's vastly different than my print run of 1,000 to 2,000 books, right?
Right.
So being an independent publisher means that if I love something and I want to just go after it, I can.
Right. Yeah, because your risk is comparable to your investment,
Right.
And not to slam small publishers, but if yours doesn't work out, it's not going to like damage you forever. You'll just move on to the next thing.
You're smart, right?
People with big reputations have a lot more to lose. I think there wasn't this, now this is veering away from art, but just for a second, just to say, Pathfinder 2 came out and they'd had such a long run with Pathfinder 1. And I think they resisted the urge that Wizards of the Coast had to come out with an edition seemingly more frequently. Although I looked it up and actually it's not that frequent. The time just flies. But that's a big reputation stake and then you have to put out something new. So now you're inevitably going to alienate somebody.
Absolutely. And, like I think every company has gone with one edition at some point in time where the fan base is like, and I won't throw shade or call anybody out by name, but right now, but I can literally think of every of the big 4 or 5 role-playing games that I play, there's at least 1 or 2 editions even where the fan base is like, I don't know about this, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think obviously, people who have come all the way down in this industry from first edition to now, there's always a certain amount that are just like they piss all over the previous, or they say the previous was the best, they should have never changed it. But then there's also people who go out of their way to really hate 4th edition, and for completely reasonable reasons sometimes, they just not what they like. So
we're gonna have to definitely talk about that sometime as last call.
Yeah, I think we should do. People are probably waiting for Edition Wars anyway, so I say we just have the fucker.
Edition Wars.
Let's just lay waste and get it done. Okay, so I guess do you have anything more to talk about on that? Because I think we're kind of close to wrapping up. I'd like to move on to our audience question that came from 2 weeks ago.
Let's do that.
Does that sound good? I will read it. This would normally be read by Matt, who is currently flying somewhere above America, having been displaced by terrible Texas tornadoes, which is not a joke. I'm making light of it, but it's not a joke. Texas
rolled
has some
through
big
last night. No big deal.
Rolled through Jimmy's world last night. Everybody that we know is safe and sound. I guess there was a couple of people who did die, but it really screwed up the flight patterns of everybody. So Matt could be with us, and we do miss him. Okay, so this is from Alexi. I don't watch chat while we're doing this. I'm way too focused and organized to do that.
Did you just say you were way too focused?
Yeah, exactly. What his question essentially gets down to is there is essentially a player in your game who is maintaining their character. They're staying in character. So your average group, maybe you have like a warrior, a priest, and a rogue, and a wizard. And this one character just acts like an ass all the time. And they blame their behavior on, well, I'm just playing in character, which is a really, when someone's being a jerk, there are reasons.
The player acts like an ass, not the character.
Yeah, exactly. And let's see if I understand this question better. So it comes down to like this character will routinely like kill people off or steal things in the game just to gain a larger bonus. And while the other players might start having a problem with not only this like asshole-like behavior, but then the fact that there's mechanical advantages being attached to it, like running in and stealing things, killing monsters before other people can, stealing kills, that kind of stuff. But then the GM kind of responds with, well, hey, it's in character, so y'all have to deal with it in character. Where do, I guess, we all kind of fall on player comes to you with a righteous gripe, everybody kind of agrees on it, but this defense of, well, hey, I'm just being in character is what is given. I mean, how do we deal with those things? I'm going to start with Jimmy because Jimmy looks like he's, as my grandmama used to say, fit to pop. So since you're fitting to pop, why don't you go right ahead?
I wonder how I deal with those.
I know what's coming.
Hey,
Jimmy, can you get the graphic for Metallica's "Kill 'Em All" up on the screen?
Just take them out, teach them a lesson. I actually don't really do that, but it is a vicious rumor that follows me
that I believe you are the central propagator of.
Yeah, I know, because I have done it a few times. I actually did it on this channel in one of our first games, so took them out. But I mean, so I've had it a couple instances, at least online, where that's gone out, and unfortunately, it reared its head where it was just I took it off my table. I'll be honest with you. And that the player It's just where it's just not gelling in the stream, and from the viewpoint of where I'm coming from on the stream and trying to put the product out there that people can go back and watch, if it becomes noticeable like that, I will cut the player. I've done it twice.
So is it different when it seems dramatic versus like the person, like how do you judge when it's in character and when it's just the player being a dick?
So, well, you ask. And so I will take the example that we just had this happen last Thursday night on Predator Rejects with the Waterdeep Dragon Heist group. And the last 15, 20 minutes of it, the characters got into an argument. And one of them stormed out. And I'm listening to it and I'm trying to make sure what I'm hearing. And the players stayed into it, and a great argument was coming back and forth, and then backed out a second. And I said, "We're just playing, right?" And they both said, "Yeah, this is my character. This is what he would do." And we talked about it a little bit off stream too, just to make sure, because I wanted to judge that. But
in that case, there's like a minimum of 3 people involved. You judging,
yeah,
and then the 2 people who are arguing, agreeing that they're just having fun.
Yeah, but I couldn't tell for a little bit. I will be honest with you. I was like, "Oh, wait a second now. Did we just cross a line there that I wasn't sure was RP, and it was strict RP?" But I'll reel it back in, though, where I've had someone just being a total dick, killing everything, gutting them. It was way back in the very beginning, just butchering everything and being just grotesque about it. And yes, Praetor hires rejects to do things, but he ain't dumb. And he's not hiring just somebody that's, it's just a wash up anyway. And I'm not looking for that kind of play. And we had it out a little bit on stream, and I said, you probably need to go elsewhere and play. So, and that was it.
Yeah. So Brian, the thing that always occurs to me in the situation that Jimmy just described is there's almost the most terrible thing you can do to someone at a gaming table is to embarrass them. They're there, Sara was saying this earlier, like it's this hyper vulnerable environment where you're like, you might say, my character starts to cry because of the thing that happened to their mom. And so the people are getting real vulnerable, but then like, how do you just tell someone at the table, or do you wait after? What do you do?
Oh, it's easy. Session 0, or the 5 minutes before you run a game of Con, you have a quick talk about expectations. Yeah. Okay. I'm running a Ravenloft game. I specifically told all the players, you guys are going to be heroes. You must be good characters. I want this to be a challenge for you morally as you play the game. And so if suddenly one of my players runs rampant, becomes chaotic neutral, chaotic evil, what have you, I'm going to say, okay, it's totally understandable that your character might do that, but you're no longer a hero. May I have your character sheet?
Right.
Okay. You're not part of the party any longer. And I totally understand too that sometimes, and God knows I have played some bastard characters before. But it depends on the game that you're playing too. Like if everyone is somewhat shady, somewhat evil, it's okay. I find that very rarely does chaotic evil ever work in the party, or it's very difficult to play. If we play an evil campaign where everyone agrees and says, hey, yes, let's play evil, let's have a little bit of fun, right? Nobody wants to play lawful good characters every single day. So we play a lawful evil game. They might have a code. They might work together. They might be bonded to one another, even though they're doing evil things, right? So there's a number of ways that you can tie a group together, even allowing them to be horrible and vile and evil, as long as they're working towards the same cause. But really, I think it comes down to having that conversation in the beginning. Be like, look, everyone's here to have fun, just like you are. So don't be a douche. Don't be a dick,
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. I think I'm really happy that the idea of Session 0 has been codified in the current wave of gaming, because yeah, people could say it appeals to millennials, but I think it honestly appeals to a lot of people. I've had a lot of people come up and say, I like the idea that we get down and sit down and talk about what this is going to be like. But it has the inherent problem of predicting for problems that you cannot anticipate in the real world. I mean, there may be many good reasons. One, somebody might just be a closet racist who you don't know, and they're just waiting to be they're waiting to get loose at your table, right? That's a real egregious example, and that's a no-go from me. Like, you start spouting that bullshit, and you will be like ceremoniously escorted to the door. But it's the more subtle stuff. And the thing that in my worst moments, I've said things at my table like, hey, Brian, you having fun? You know, you're like, well, yeah, I guess I is. Everybody else having fun? Everybody else really having fun right now. And that has the worry that I have that it embarrasses Brian, who might be the person doing this thing right now. Now he's going to be
I have no shame.
It's going to get even worse though, right? Because now the person who already was acting like a jerk, I've just pinned down, and now I'm going to make you double down being a jerk probably. So I find taking people aside, I usually let it roll during the game. I kind of laugh it off. And I know some people have said to me, you should have stopped it right away. Well, you know, tell that to the train conductor. You can't stop some things right away. But I find that just getting with my players and saying, listen, we're all trying to have fun here. And my example isn't even the like in-character racist or the in-character dickhead. It's the guy who plays the rogue and then always wants me to have a party of one and the party of everyone else. And I've known people who played rogues forever who were very able to be part of the party and still do their own thing. But I've had cases where this person just wanted their own game, clearly. And so I would just say, listen, you only have to come 1 out of every 2 weeks. I will sit down with you for an hour and roll out your stuff, and then you can go, because you don't really want to play with these other people. Well, usually that's enough for them to understand, well, damn, dude, that seems like a lot of extra work for you. And it was sincere. Like, this person looked at me like, wow, you would really do that? I'm like, well, do I have to? Like, because I don't understand how else like this is going to work. You don't want to be with the group. And in that case, the person just kind of left of their own volition. What I was serving up was not what they wanted to partake in. So, you know, I guess it just works out like that sometimes too.
Well, it's interesting that because I've got the dilemma that's coming up. There's a release on the Guild called Skullport. I can't remember the back end name, but basically it's a reimage of Dragon Heist, but you're in Skullport. And so you're evil characters, you're chaotic, you're all on that other side now. And they play it out the same, you know, it's basically the same timeline type stuff and different ways to go with the different new factions and all this group. So I want to run it on the channel. But now you've got to, you know, so where's that line? We're going to push it way over here now to evil, but I'm not looking for just blood ass plain ass evil characters. There's got to be a time. And he talks about it in the module some about how to run this or things to consider that the characters are doing because they're down there for a reason. So they're not really good people already. And there's evil all around there. But how can they make it worth to save what's going on and actually tote that line? So I've got to read up on it a little bit more, but I'm going to run it on the channel, and I'm going to look for some of the role play people that can actually get into it and understand what they're running. So
I think just to close out before we sign off on this part of it, remember everybody, we're going to be on last call in like 5 minutes after the end of the show. Last call, we're going to be talking about something interesting, which we'll hint at in just a minute. But I wanted to simply say that this is another great topic we should talk about sometime, guys, which is I am not a super huge fan of lore in my role-playing products. I don't need to know about why 700 years ago there was a king and all this stuff. What I really want is the guy who wrote the damn thing to say, I was thinking about Conan, I was listening to Metallica, and I think the way this scene should be, I think the way, okay, I am talking about myself. This is how this could be run, and use lore, like build little lore segments that could be about how to tell people. The reason I say this is I think sometimes people act like this in these horribly inappropriate ways out of nervousness and an inability to process like what should be going on. As a veteran GM, I know what should be going on is not something I can fully control. So I just let go of it. It doesn't bother me if players go off the rails like they fucking did last Friday. But if they do that, that's fine with me because I can just pivot. But players don't have that much of a luxury. They don't have that level of agency where they feel they can do that. So I think getting back to session 0 is a great place to deal with it. Dealing with it directly and talking to people is a great thing. But also better content for us to run that helps us explain things in a way that people understand where they are in the story and what their importance in the story is. I remember an old module where it says, if you're a priest, here are things you can do in this module. If you're a wizard, that was great advice. Great advice. So anyway, I guess that's enough for tonight. Wow, what a show.
Hey,
yeah,
Danny.
Yeah.
Would it be possible for you to show off the Mimic cover?
I just found it if he's got it. If not,
I can share my screen.
Yeah, just share your. You don't do that. Is this a PDF already, or is this a? Yeah, hold on. Let me.
If you're grabbing it off Google, yes, it's a 34.
Yeah, I'm pulling it right now, but
now you're getting a glimpse into publishing, everyone.
I just wanted to taunt all of our viewers to catch a little glimpse of the madness that we're about to drop on the world.
Hey, Patreon people
for
too.
Free.
I just want to say I don't interact with folks over on Patreon that much, and it's not for lack of wanting to. It's just a matter of time and resources that I have right now. But I super appreciate and love everybody who's out there helping us keep hanging this thing out every couple of weeks. It is not hard to find time in our lives either, and it's not easy to find the money to make it all happen. So when you guys support us, it is super critical, and it's super flattering that y'all would do it. So I just want to say a big thank you from me, and I'm sure my fellow wizards. I know Matt feels that way too.
Window
Absolutely.
capture. I'm getting there. 1 second.
No problem.
Are you going to put it up in missing person?
No, I'm trying to figure out OBS is messing with me. Sorry.
Hey, quick shout out too while he's trying to find this. The Wizards, the three of us, not Matt, so it'll be just like this episode, at Gamehole Con coming up on October 31st through the 3rd in Madison, Wisconsin. You can still get a badge. The badges are really reasonable. It's a great show. It's small enough that you can actually rub elbows with industry legends. Like I've seen Tim Kask there before. I've seen, some of these people really from the old school, plus a ton of great publishers. I think Wolfgang Bauer is usually there. He was a guest on the show. He's great. So you should go to the Gamehole Con site, look for an event, type in Blackwood Society, and you will find, I think, Brian, your event is full, right?
It's sold out, yeah.
It's sold out. I'm running with my running partner, Bruce Taylor, and my wife, Susan, Tentacles on a Plane, and that's going to be a Cthulhu thing on Saturday night. We're also running some stuff by John Messenger, who's an author that we're publishing. Look for those. Carnal House and Circus of Freaks. We're looking for people in those. Plus, we're running 2 brand new games that nobody's ever heard of, which is why nobody signed up. Battlegrounds, which is 5e, but it's like a battle royale. It's super dope, great. Jimmy's going to be running that. And me and my running partner, Dane, are going to be running Not a Nautiloid, where we run these big astral battles between spaceships. So go to Gamehole Con first, sign up for Gamehole Con, get our events, and come meet us because we'd love to see you.
And you know what? We are not superhumans. Feel free to stop by, say hello, talk to us, ask us questions. We work for beer.
We do.
So.
I work for just shameless adulation. If you come up to me and say, I saw you somewhere, I'll be like, what can I do for you then?
I'm make sure putting it on once. I had it up and then I killed it, and I'm trying to figure out why I did that.
While Jimmy's working on that, do you want to maybe tease a little bit what last call is going to be?
Oh yeah, last call. We're going to talk about the Wendy's RPG. We were going to talk about it a couple of weeks ago.
It's so hot and juicy.
Yeah, it's hot and juicy, like a flame broiled hot and juicy burger. It is to me, as if I put my body into the DeLorean from Back to the Future and go back to 1983, it's the kind of shit that I could only imagine, like I would make a joke about. Imagine if some days McDonald's had a role-playing game. Well, Wendy's has a role-playing game. Yeah. And it's not terrible.
Right. But don't give.
Really.
Okay, no more secrets. We'll save that for the discussion.
Okay.
Well, it's been 2 weeks. I mean, I thought this topic would be dead, but I think it's still alive because I think people are still amazed by it. So yeah,
It has a good shelf life.
it
does.
It never gets stale.
It's juicy.
Always fresh, never frozen.
That's right.
That's right. I
Made
like mine with
made
ketchup.
your own
Wait,
way.
That's not secular.
Made your own way. I worked at Wendy's.
Hey,
when I
did
was
you
in
put
high
up the?
school.
Did you put
It's
up
up?
the?
It's been up. It's sitting
Okay,
there.
good. Well, then we're signing off. Find us everywhere. We're on social media. Go to Patreon. Become a patron. It's one of the best things you can do with a few dollars. It will keep us on the air and out of trouble.
Yep.
Wait.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay, good.
All right.
And we're going to stick around for last call, just a few minutes, jump back on 5 minutes.
Get
and
back
we'll
in
see you
5
then.
minutes, guys.
Maybe
So,
RPG.
All right.
Goodbye.